Hello and welcome to another ck3 video. Today we'll be asking, what if the Mongols never fell? And it's pretty simple how I did this. I just made their first ruler immortal, but I spawned them in 1066, so let's see what the Mongols can do with these 400 years. They pretty much have no reason to fall. Usually they fall because their ruler dies or they run out of money, and I kind of gave them a lot of money too. So we have a buff to Mongolia, and let's see what they do over this game. If you like this episode, make sure to like and subscribe for more ck3 content. We're also going to do a ton of humankind content. I took a little bit of a break, but we shall be back into making more content and some more interesting content, maybe a lot less let's plays, but let's get into it. So we have the Mongols starting here. I gave him a whole bunch of prestige, whole bunch of gold, and I pretty much made this guy immortal. So what does that mean? He cannot die. He will be 25 forever. He will not die, and he also has a ton of other boosts because he is a great Khan. So we should see this guy rule this entire time. These guys are the Mongols. They're the Mongol culture and this other religion. It's going to be quite interesting to see how they do and where we end up in the end of this video, but hopefully it is good and you guys enjoy it. And the Mongols, they're gonna hurt some people. They already got 38,000 troops. Yeah, it's gonna be painful. They should do quite well out here, especially because they're gonna invade and probably murder everyone. What will be cool to see is if they fall and come back, because there's a chance that there's like gonna be an independence war and everything's gonna break apart. But I think even if that happens, since he isn't a mortal ruler, he will be able to come back again. He's also a pretty good ruler too, so he'll never die, and usually that's when big things happen. So we should maybe see Mongols fall and rise over and over again. We're only a little bit into it and the Mongol Empire is doing quite well, so hopefully we see them continue to thrive. This nation, I always call them the Slukids, but it's not. They're falling right now, so the Mongols should even eat up even more land. Hopefully the Mongols keep going. I kind of want them to actually conquer the whole world. It would be kind of cool. We've never seen them do that, so hopefully we see them take everything. So the Mongols are actually doing okay. They've collapsed a little bit. They don't look too bad. They're kind of disgusting borders, but like they're still in the game. We're still 50 years in. Mongols don't last too long, so at least they've lasted for 50 years. Actually, it's more like 100 years, so they're doing okay. They're doing okay. The rest of the world isn't doing too shabby either. France is actually looking pretty good for usually how they collapse. HRE is looking real good too. Byzantines aren't that powerful, and I think the Mongols being nearby could be the reason. But this is actually quite an interesting game, and I can't wait to see more of it. This is more something that I predicted. The Mongol Empire would kind of fall into its shell a little bit and then maybe expand later on. You could see that it lost a lot of its territory, and I'm hoping it gains it back. And so it's kind of going to do this back and forth of like losing land and gaining back land, just because a lot of the land it usually takes isn't their land. So we should see them maybe come back a little bit from this. We have a couple nations that have spawned that are pretty cool out of this, like Kumania. They usually are pretty weak. They usually collapse later in the game, but they're actually doing quite good. I also see the good old Poland and Ruthenia looking good, and usually they're not looking too good in this game, so it's kind of cool to see some of these nations that don't do so good doing good. We also got a cool Jerusalem that usually falls apart, but it's still cool to see them. And like clockwork, the Mongols are back conquering a whole bunch of land. This is literally what I thought would happen. They would fall, then come back up. I predicted this right in the beginning. You could say, I know ck3, when you have 1,200 hours into it, you start to see the same thing over and over again. But it's still a pretty interesting game. Ruthenia and Poland losing some power. Nothing's really happening in Scandinavia. England and Scotland is pretty unique. Usually they're not that unified where it's just two nations. So you might actually see something come out of the British Isles, which would be cool. Byzantines are starting to gain a little bit of power, but they're going through a civil war right now, but nothing too interesting going on besides the Mongols coming back. Something I just want to point out is the biggest problem, another reason why the Mongols struggle so much, is you can see all the civil wars happening in the entire nation. Every time there's like those slashes, that means there's land occupied by someone that doesn't own that land, and there's just civil wars all throughout this nation. So that's one of the biggest problems with the Mongol Empire, is that they just don't own any other religion and culture, and they don't do that well at converting it either. So the Mongol Empire is gone, but Mongolia is here. So pretty much what happened is the faction got ousted. So there's a new ruler in Mongolia. So we still have this Mongolian Empire, but they're just not the Horde anymore. I think they're going to last for the entire game, but the Horde is gone, but the Mongol Empire is still here. So it's a little weird, but it makes sense. It's still technically here. Then in other places, Ruthenia, Poland, still going strong. I really like like how they're doing. Norway's starting to pick it up in Scandinavia. Italy's doing good in the kind of peninsula. It's kind of weird. They've kind of came out of nowhere. Italy, I really like them, but there's a lot of bigger nations, which is kind of weird. Usually it's still pretty border gory, so it's cool to see all these nations really forming up. Looks like Mongolia is gonna sit out the rest of the game, even though this video is pretty much about them. They're looking all right, and to be honest, I think without heavily modding the game, it's going to be hard to keep Mongolia like this thriving empire without just making them control the entire planet, like to do like a happy medium, because I could make them just take the entire planet in an instant by buffing the crap out of them, but you know, they had to have a fighting chance of losing, and they ended up losing. But in other words, the other news, we still have Poland and Ruthenia. I keep on mentioning them because they literally say the same, but I like them. The HRE is starting to get some power, which is kind of cool. One of the nations I haven't talked about is in Africa. We have like Egypt looking good, the Abyssinia is looking good, Jerusalem's looking good. We actually have quite a bit of places in Africa just looking good in general, but India and Middle East is looking probably the worst I've ever seen. But we got some powers that should probably do pretty good for the rest of the game. It was about that time for the Byzantines to ruin another campaign. They always just like, hey, I know we weren't really like in the spotlight, but like, let's take the spotlight now. The Byzantines are doing absolutely amazing. The nation also in Egypt is looking really good as well. They took all of Jerusalem, so they're looking really well. I don't think they could challenge the Byzantines. They could maybe give them a little bit of problem, but the Byzantines are looking real strong. They might take out Ruthenia, and I'd be pretty mad because I've been mentioning them a lot in this video, and if they take out my boy, I'm be pissed. Also, the Mongols got a name change. Name change? They got a name change, which is kind of interesting. Not really, but you know, I have to mention them still. We are 50 years until the end date, and I have to say, it's the Byzantines game. There's no one that can stop them at this point. Mongolia, don't look at them, please. They're kind of gross on the eyes right now. But besides the Byzantines, there's no one really doing that good compared to them. Comparatively, the Byzantines are just doing amazing. And I hate when the Byzantines win a campaign, because it's like 50% of my videos, and it's quite annoying. I've literally removed them in one of my videos where like I took them out of the game, and they still won somehow. Don't ask. I don't know who to give the win to now. The Byzantines fell at the end. They actually like split in half. Mongols are officially, they're not gone. There's a little bit of them left, so they can come back maybe, but there's no one good right now. This is probably one of the worst endings I've ever seen at the end date. There is no nation that is powerful. Some of the most powerful nations I see is Jerusalem, and then this, not African nation, this Indian nation in the south. But yeah, the Byzantines collapsed right at the finish line, and there's no one here to really see who wins. But we're gonna go all the way till modern day, a little past modern day, and see what the world looks like way past then, and see culture, religion then. But wow, this is pretty disappointing. I'm surprised we got this far and it's this bad. Thank you, Byzantines, for ruining another game. I'm blaming it all on you. And the Mongols. The Mongols should have conquered everything. So we are way into the future, and I have to say, it looks pretty ugly still. But we can tell some obvious winners. The biggest obvious winner is probably this nation right here. Can't pronounce their name, but they got most of India and a lot of the Middle East. They're looking quite good. They have over 300,000 troops while being in a major war. Mongolia, my boy. Mongolia is still here. The buffing the Mongols must have paid off a little bit, because they're still here and they never make it all the way to when we go this far in the future. So it's cool to see them here. We also have the HRE and the Byzantines here still, which is kind of unique. Same with Francia and Britannia. They're still here, which usually doesn't happen either. It's kind of unique to not see anyone forming Hispania. See this part not unified. India's looking pretty good. We got Nubia, and then we also have Guinea. Maybe that's just Guinea. They're looking pretty good. And I have to say Estonia is definitely looking good too. Overall, I have to say, pretty unique game. Mongols made it to the end. Also, the thing that really matters, Iceland is independent. And when they're independent, I'm happy when they survive. Religion, we can see that it's pretty normal. Orthodox is pretty powerful, where the Byzantines are. I have a feeling the Byzantines are not Orthodox anymore and are actually, oh, they're actually English. So that means Britannia probably had all this land at some point, and then they split in half because of succession. That is cool. Catholics are doing all right. They're not doing that good. They're kind of weak, but not too weak. You can see that the Byzantines really spread a big chunk of their land. You can see over here that it's a lot of the Islamic faiths. We do have some non-Islamic faiths still out here, but they're starting to struggle. Culture-wise, there we go. We actually have a big spread of the Mongol culture. We can see that they actually did something. Russia expanded. They're pretty much Estonian Russian. English expanded quite well, and the Greeks, of course, expand because of the Byzantines. But overall, this was a pretty neat campaign. Now, let's look at the empire titles. Pretty messy, but I like it. Especially Britannia expanding, HRE kind of expanded. This is a pretty interesting empire title map. But overall, I really like this video. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and stay out there for future content. See you later. Bye.